Genesis 12 through 15. This is the story of Abraham, who we met at the end of chapter 11, if you recall, at the end of the Tower of Babel incident when he and his family leaves the Ur of the Chaldees, or Babylon. He has been called by God to, of course, be a worshiper of his Maker, and also to believe the promise that he would become the father of many nations and the inheritor of a great land. Well, the story, of course, proceeds to mention several cities that Abraham visits or even sojourns in. Salem is one where he meets a fellow worshiper of God, interestingly enough. And the story ends in our reading at Hebron. The point of these cities that I write out here is that if you line them up, this is a north-south route right down the middle of Canaan, which is, it turns out, the land that God had promised Abraham as an inheritance. And in two of these cities, it is key that it is said that Abraham creates an altar to the Lord. In other words, he is right in the midst of this pagan polytheism of this area. He is setting up an altar in worship of his God. The theme verse really that comes out of this passage in 15:6, it's a very familiar verse, very powerful verse because of how often it will be used in the future. It says that Abraham believed God and it was accounted unto him as righteousness, or he was considered righteous because of this belief. That's a tricky word in English. There is no good English word for the Hebrew word that really sits behind this, which is aman. But I'd recommend that, of course, as Abraham believed and was considered righteous, what's interesting is that this same word, aman, is used of God in Deuteronomy 7:9. And the way it's translated here, I'd recommend we translate it here as well. It is translated as faithful. Understand that the word aman, often translated as believe or faith in the Old Testament, has a very heavy idea of faithfulness to it. In other words, the story is that Abraham has been called by God to go to a land that is thoroughly pagan, thoroughly polytheistic, and in so doing, when he creates these altars as a statement of his loyalty to this one God, that is really what's behind the fuller idea of Abraham believing in God, that he is becoming faithful to him in spite of all the temptation to worship other gods as well. So watch for this idea to be part of Abraham's life from here on out.